It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is brought to you by Amori. How was your first Christmas without your mom? How was your wedding day without your dad? If you know the pain of losing someone you deeply loved, Amori is for you. Amori is a digital time capsule that helps you reflect on mortality, navigate emotions, and create heartfelt messages for your children, so you can feel prepared and let your presence be felt through life's many moments, even when you're no longer here. Let your words become a source of strength and comfort for those you leave behind. Tomorrow isn't promised, but your love can be. Download your mortality companion today at amori.life. That's AMORI.life, and use the code WhenWeDie50 for 50% off. Hey, and welcome here or welcome back to When We Die Talks. This episode gave me so much trouble, and I should be more specific because it wasn't the episode in itself, but the editing around it. This new workflow with the video component is adding a whole other level of complexity that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But I had a few people reach out and say how much they loved the video episode last week, so I know it'll all become more natural in time. I do think I ended up editing the first 10 minutes of this call 4 or 5 times due to the tech issues, so I hope it sounds amazing. Like so many conversations on this podcast, this one starts out light. The caller and I are joking about humidity, pets, and even the idea of being reincarnated as a cactus. But as the call goes on, it gets heavier. They share personal battles with chronic illness, they share about leaving the church, and what it means to find comfort in the cycles of nature when faith falls away. What really struck me was how this caller talked about energy being recycled. It felt a bit different than what we've heard before. Through plants, through animals, through us. By the end, they're describing symbiosis, growth, and the way even death can become compost for something new. The caller mentions at one point that humor is their way of coping, and you'll hear that throughout. There are a lot of laughs, but when we break through, it's deeply personal and incredibly moving. I hope you enjoy.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
About the same. We'll get into where you're calling from in a second, but I'm in Portland and it's really hot right now, but comparative to where you might be, it might not be, might not be able to say anything about that. But
How hot is it in Portland? What constitutes very hot for you?
I think yesterday it was 97 and today it's right around there, 95 to 97. I haven't checked exactly what it's at, but that's hot for us.
Actually, you are a little warmer than me, which is wild. I would not expect that.
Yeah, me neither. Well, I mean, I guess I do. I think I know where you're calling from, or I'm calling you from. I don't know. This is a weird start to the call. I'm sorry. I'm like all over the place.
Take a running guess. I'm curious if you know where I'm from or where I live. I'm not from here.
I think you told me in the application that you're in Florida, but I could be wrong.
No, you have a good memory. Damn.
Sorry. Well,
I'm in Florida. I'm in the Bradenton, Palmetto area, which is like, I don't know, an hour south of Tampa.
Okay. But you also have, and I don't want this to be all about weather because I hate talking about weather, but I will say I hate humidity also. And you have humidity and it does not work well with me. I grew up in Colorado, so I'm used to like dry, no humidity.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Tennessee. I grew up on a mountain in Tennessee, so okay. I'm not one for the humidity. I'm not a fan.
I don't understand the people like, oh yeah, I love it. I'm like, yeah, it just does not make any sense to me.
I enjoy drowning while talking to people. No, nobody does. Why would you say that?
Totally. We could probably talk about the weather and how crappy humidity is, for an hour, but that would be...
Unfortunately, I think we could.
That would be a much less interesting conversation, I think. So I am curious because it is kind of a weird thing for me to put out to the world of like, hey, let's jump on the phone and talk about death. And so maybe just kind of briefly, you could give me an idea of why you even wanted to do the call.
Well, I've had a bit of an interesting medical journey over the last 14 years of my life. And I almost died from a couple of blood clots like 11 years ago.
Okay.
So
that changes your view on things real quick.
I've had a full ride of chronic pain since then. And so I kind of lived in a somewhat melancholic, Eeyore-ish state.
Okay.
And so I'm very comfortable with the idea of death. but I don't really think of it as an ending so much as a transmutation.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get more into all of that, I'm sure, especially that last part that you're kind of hinting at. And then the normal question that I ask next is where you're calling from, but we already covered that. And so the last kind of get to know you kind of question before we dive into things, maybe you can let me know your favorite book and why.
Thanks for a moment.
I was going to say, that's usually a harder question. Whenever I bring that up to people, they're like, oh, wait, hold on. I was not prepared for this question.
No, see, I was, because I listened to one of your past episodes.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh man, I need to figure out what my favorite book is. So I'm like, ready. And then I did things the whole day, and I was like, and then you're asking, I was like, shit, I totally prepared for this, but I didn't. Like, I was ready for it, and then I forgot to get ready for it.
No, that happens.
But at least I remembered the call. So,
that's true. You got that going for you.
I'm doing better than some.
Yeah.
But I have two answers for you.
That's totally fine.
These were two different periods of my life.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I would say but the book that probably had the biggest impact on me was The Secret Garden.
Okay.
And because it's really complicated for like a kid's book. And it talks about loss, and it talks about it being places where you don't feel like you belong, and navigating kind of a weird family structure that has not the best communication. And then ultimately, through the awkwardness, finding like a beauty and like a joy and making it kind of their own. And so for me at the time, I felt very lost growing up. And I think it was instrumental to me in a lot of ways. It was very comforting that like, if someone's writing about this in a children's book, then
you're not alone.
Clearly they wanted me to feel like it's okay if you feel like everything's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people feel that way. But as a adolescent teen, I think The Giver was probably a big book for me, because I grew up in the church and I always felt like, probably because of autism, like I saw the world in a way that everybody else didn't see it. And the strength of the character to push back against the things that he knew weren't right and leave it behind was very also encouraging and uplifting in its own way. But yeah, I really love both of those books for similar reasons.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you for those recommendations. But we can kind of jump off at the big question of, what do you think happens when we die?
Well, kind of a big believer in, so I told you that I grew up in the church, but I'm not a Christian anymore. And at this point, I would say that I believe that an object in motion stays in motion. And so I think even when we die, I think the energy of our life can be transmutated into different things. And what exactly that is, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm also pretty sure I believe in reincarnation. But I just think that energy can't really die. And even when it does, it's like rebirth into other things.
Yeah.
And so I have a feeling that it's not so simple as like, oh, we die, we go to heaven, and that's it. We live happily ever after somewhere else. Not to bash any of that. I just don't believe it.
This call's about you and your beliefs, so you don't have to worry about what other people think.
Sure. My family, my mom is more conservative, and so I'm used to.
I was going to say, that's a very easy thing to say.
Backtracking.
Yeah, totally.
And being like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. That's stupid and ridiculous. Except in my brain, I'm like, yes, you did. And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, that's got to be a challenge.
A little bit, yeah. But it's not a bad thing to learn how to communicate with people that have different viewpoints on the world. And honestly, this is a weird offshoot, but honestly, if it helps people to have that kind of wireframe to deal with the world and they're not hurting people while they're doing it, that's the best one.
I'm 100% in agreement on that. And that's part of this conversation that I'm having with a bunch of people, where I definitely have some of my own views, but I'm like, at the end of the day, like, we all just need something that we can believe in and find comfort in, because we are all going to die. And so exactly like you said, if this is what you need to believe to make you feel comfortable, 1,000% fine, 1,000% cool. I love that you have that. But the minute that you try to force it on other people and say that you're doing it wrong or whatever, and that's where I'm like, well, we don't know.
Or like limit someone else's happiness or whatever. Like, sorry, boss, we're going to be on the opposite side of the picket line, and I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah. So I'm in very much agreement with you where it's like whatever someone needs to believe in to feel comfortable is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, kids grow up believing in Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, everything that comforts them. Like, it's the same idea. Like, whatever like belief system you have that gives you some amount of comfort and it's not hurting someone else, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
I hope that never shatters. I hope that it only grows stronger. I hope that, that helps you make sense of the world, because the world is nonsensical.
Yeah, totally. To kind of get you back to, I kind of took us off on a tangent too.
I'm sorry, I did too. I'm ADHD as hell.
I know. It's totally fine. It was more that I then doubled down on it. So you kind of were talking about this idea of this, and I hear this a lot of this, energy continuation.
Yeah.
But then you also kind of threw in like reincarnation possibly in there. And I know it's complicated because it's like, we don't really know as we talk about energy. I think the biggest thing that I wonder about is then like identity and self, and is like, does that continue to exist, or is it, in this energy transfer, I just become part of the universe and I don't really exist. Like, how do you feel about that kind of like identity of self in this kind of energy transfer? Like, do you feel like you would still exist in this kind of next phase, or is it just, it doesn't matter because we're part of something bigger and there is an identity anymore? Long-winded way of asking that.
So a friend of mine, I'm sure someone else said this, but a friend of mine said this to me a while ago when I was kind of going through a hard time. He said, you are the universe expressing itself as a person for a little while.
Yeah.
And I later learned that like the same stuff that makes up stars is also found in like the human body. And so I think our energy, like, I feel like the purest part of our energy that's truly connected to like the universe and like the earth is something that's from nature.
Yeah.
But I think that when we've lived a life as a person and we've kind of defined for ourselves who we are, like when that energy gets kind of recycled back into existence, that it will always kind of have our soul attached to it. I think kind of we might live a life as a plant and we might live a life as another person. And I don't believe in like a creator of any kind, but I do kind of think that humans live such long lifespans in comparison to a lot of other animals.
Yeah.
Because we have so much to learn, and it takes us a lot longer to learn it because
I love that.
Life is so complicated.
Yeah.
And we're complicated, and culture creates complications, as well as ethnicity and country and rights and lack of rights and like all the human things that don't exist for the most part in the animal world.
Yeah, we complicate things.
We do. We complicate it so much. And for funsies, I think, like, let's just see how crazy we can drive each other, just to see. So I have a theory as to why like dogs and cats live such short lives in comparison to humans, is that they have such pure souls. And I feel like if dogs and cats and those kinds of animals, or just any animal, honestly, are like a reincarnated soul that's like the last kind of stop before, I don't know, we fade into like the galaxy or something, but because those are so pure and so connected to the earth.
They've learned the lessons.
Yeah. And like that,
I love that.
That's where we get to just live. Like, it's not connected to expectations or feelings of, oh, I should be so much more, or feeling left out, or all of these other things. Like, and it all depends on like what kind of personality you have. I mean, some people are destined to be dogs. I mean, that's why we have golden retriever boyfriends and black cat girlfriends and shit like that. I'm like, that girl's gonna be a black cat someday. So I think energy it doesn't really have as many rules as I think people would like to ascribe to it, because rules give you a framework, and frameworks are comfortable.
Yeah, we love frameworks.
But I don't think that, I'm a big fan of frameworks, like really like them.
Yeah.
Because
they make sense.
Typical people don't have them.
Yeah.
So all these insinuations about 1,000,001 things from like 3 sentences. But I'm a big fan of framework. But I also think that there's this lost pureness and joy for life and existence that can be found experiencing life in its different ways. And I think the earth has a habit of recycling, and I don't see why it wouldn't recycle our souls to try and further a better care and respect for the world.
I love so many things that you just said. I don't know how long ago I came across, but that, and I'm going to butcher it, you said it beautifully, but the idea of like the universe experiencing itself. I've always really loved that idea and thought it was very interesting and cool as, you know, I'm digging into consciousness as I'm, you know, also digging into death. So I love that you brought that up because I feel like it is such an interesting thing to think about that we're just all part of this universe experiencing itself. So I love that. But then I really, really love, I mean, I probably need to stop talking about my dog on here so much, but I love when anybody talks about animals. And I love this idea of we complicate things because we have all these desires and aspirations and whatnot. And so we're here like learning these lessons. And then if we get it figured out, then we get to go be a dog or a cat. I haven't heard that before, but I really love that idea. I did. It's slightly different. And it was definitely a joke. Because I told this to one person and they're like, "Oh, is that true?" And I'm like, "No, I was just joking," or they were just joking. But so I went and saw these monks speak. It was end of last year, and they were talking about. Someone asked about death, and it was like, "Oh, this is awesome! I love that I'm here for this," because they were talking about death or whatever. And one of them made this joke. I keep on having to say it's a joke because I don't want anybody to be like, "Oh, is this true? This is what Buddhists believe." But essentially, he said that dogs were like 2 stages before humans in the reincarnation scheme because they're like, "Oh, look how great humans are. Look how awesome they are. I love my human. I love that, you know, the kind of that attitude." And cats are 1 level after humans where it's like, "Oh God, those idiots." And I was like, I could totally see that too. But I love that like yours gets down to like the core of like love and, you know, like pureness and that stuff. And that is what our animals and our pets have.
I mean, sometimes cats are pure evil, but sometimes you need to let that out.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I need to be petty for 15 years in this general person's direction.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's just like an entanglement of like souls where it's like, I'm stuck with this person again. They've been a real asshole to me forever, you know, time and time and time again. Now I get to pay it back. It's like, my pureness in this life is me being a cat that gets to be an asshole. I kind of love that too.
Right. Yeah. I could be like a furry ninja that kind of makes people's lives a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Like,
totally. I love
I'm
that.
going to roll this toilet paper out to the day I die.
I love that. I want to be the furry ninja that just makes someone's life really difficult. And I have a couple people in mind in my life that I would do.
Be like loved.
Oh, totally.
So much.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you have to be a little secretive with it where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be a jerk right now and for the next hour. And then I'm going to be really sweet for a little bit so that you don't want to get rid. But it's like, you got to keep them on the hook a little bit. That's yeah.
Right. I'm sugar and spice and I'm sometimes nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure this means I'm probably going to have to live as a human again because I have not learned how to not be petty or something. So
well, who knows? Maybe you'll be a plant or something, and you'll be like a cactus in the wilderness or something.
That sounds great. I love the desert. So even though I don't like the heat, I really love the desert. I think it's beautiful. So being a cactus sounds kind of great.
Cactuses and succulents.
Yeah.
I worked at an exotic plant nursery here.
Oh, nice.
For on and off for a couple of years, and so I still have 50 succulents on my balcony right now. So it took a awesome non-plant person into a major plant person.
The great thing about them is that they're really easy to take care of. It's really hard to kill them.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I do have a couple plants.
I was going to say I've killed a couple, but by and large,
I think I've killed 2. There's one that just won't die. Like it dies and then it comes back to life, and I'm like, okay, I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
like you're just emotional. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's experiencing its emotions in some way.
Yeah, like someone got turned into a plant and they can't decide if they want to live or want to die. I totally understand that.
Yeah, they're just a little confused and they're figuring it out. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah,
and understandable.
They need a couple of years to figure themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe they'll die and maybe they'll, keep on going. But yeah, who knows? It's going to be an adventure for you.
Yeah, I had like 50 souls on my balcony right now. Cool.
I was going to say, this is one of the ones in the past life that found you difficult. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to make this really complicated. I'm going to kind of live back and forth between, alive and dead.
Mm-hmm. Just, I got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, totally. Which is, we need that, Well, now we've gone off track again, but that's okay. I am curious.
Oh,
no. And we're still talking about death. It's all part of it. But I am kind of curious if you're willing to talk about it. You kind of talked about how you've been on this kind of medical journey for, I think you said totally like 14 or 15 years. I think you kind of said that that's definitely affected your feelings around death and whatnot. Yeah. And so I'm curious about that journey and how that's kind of changed your, did you kind of view things differently before you're kind of going through this battle?
Well, I was raised in the church. I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and my dad is a pastor, kind of.
Okay.
And so that was awful. I was a Christian up until like 6 years ago. So,
okay, so fairly recent.
So kind of like I don't mind sharing about it. I'm fairly open about the shit show that is my life. So I had ovarian issues that resulted in multiple surgeries that resulted in the loss of an ovary and a fallopian tube, and was like super painful for like a couple of years. Sometimes I still get
not sound
like
fun
from it. And did you know that when a cyst ruptures, it's comparable to the pain of labor? So at the time, I made a terrible joke to my Christian mother that I've had 4 children and no sex. And she was not entertained. I thought it was hilarious. Go to my doctor, but she was not a fan.
That is pretty great.
The silence in the room was uncomfortable.
You're like, do we need a drum kit in here? Bump.
Yeah, exactly. I need one to follow me around for all of the sterile, unthought things that just pop out of my mouth with zero thought going into them. People like, you're so funny. I'm like, I'm glad you think so. After that, I had abdominal pain for a couple of years, and I had my gallbladder removed. I'm not entirely sure that had anything to do with it, but they were like, we don't know. Let's take something out of you.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. And then after that, because of the ovarian issues, they put me on birth control to try and stop the growth of the cyst. And we didn't know this at the time, but I have a blood clotting disorder, and birth control can cause blood clot.
Fun.
And so 3 months on the birth control, and I had a blood clot the length of my left leg.
Whoa.
And a giant blood clot in my lung.
Whoa.
Which is a pulmonary embolism. And like a month prior, I'd been feeling pretty bad, but I was so used to doctors just kind of gaslighting me all the time that I was like, it's probably nothing. Until I woke up one day with my left leg swollen to like 2 times the size of its normal size and purple, and I couldn't put any weight on it. And I also didn't really feel like I could breathe super well. And so I had to be taken to the hospital. I spent 5 days in the ICU, in the cardiac ICU, and then the next 6 to 8 weeks using a walker. And I had to move back in with my parents and stay with them and
couldn't tell your awesome jokes
for most of that time. Well, I did make a joke, not to my parents. I made a joke to my cardiac ICU nurse. A friend of mine was visiting me, and my nurse was at the moment talking to me and saying like, oh, you need to take care of yourself because this could happen, this could happen. She was like, even though this is super rare. And I was like, wait, what's super rare? She's like, amputation. And I was like at the knee? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, so that's a possibility? And she was like, I mean, a rare possibility, but if you don't take care of yourself, it could go that way. And my friend and I weren't taking it seriously at all because humor is my way of dealing with things a lot of the time. And he was like, well, you could dress up as a pirate for Halloween, like I was like, then he started singing some old song called Peggy Sue to Me, and my nurse was like, get the hell out of my ICU.
Like, come on.
And she was great though. But yeah, my parents were pretty scared for the whole me like surviving all of that, which is pretty fair.
Yeah.
It took a pretty long time for me to get anywhere back to kind of a normal, but I honestly think that kind of set the stage for like a lot of things just kind of going wrong in my body over the next years. eventually I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a nerve disorder where like my body feels like a 5-year-old is tap dancing on this nerve in my back or something. But they're not. Or like a screwdriver is like needling on the tips of my fingers, but it's not.
That sounds like fun.
Super fun. And then I was diagnosed with this thing called Ehlers-Danlos, which means my muscles are super stretchy. So I can kind of casually partially dislocate or fully dislocate joints.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super fun. And I found that out by partially dislocating my shoulder and my wrist for like about a month, maybe a little more than that. And I didn't realize that they were like, I was in pain, but I just didn't know what was wrong. And I kind of felt like my shoulder was dislocated, but not fully. And I didn't really understand that partial dislocation was a thing.
That's crazy.
And then TikTok actually was like, how to relocate your shoulder. And I was like, okay.
Perfect.
And so I tried it and it worked. And I was like, oh my God, I can use my arm again. I was like, wait, look it up
so
on
crazy.
for the wrist. And so like I relocated my wrist and I was like, oh my God, I can use my arm again.
Oh my God.
So
that's wild.
It's been a wild ride. And so I'm still kind of figuring things out. There's things that doctors just won't help me with. Or, like refuse to do tests for or whatever. So I'm just trying to manage things on my own because I've given up on the medical industry.
Yeah.
So all of that is like 14, 15 years of just pretty constant pain.
Yeah.
So I don't experience no pain anymore. That's not my life.
Yeah.
But, you know, going through all that pain and at the time, for the most part, being Christian, that was hugely disappointing to me because there's really nothing comforting that you can find in Christian wise. Like they'll pray for you, but then they'll also judge you for not getting better faster or like having problems chronically. It's not really a community that supports that, at least not the ones that I was in. And so I think being in pain during all of that made me have to learn how to rely on myself a lot because friends couldn't deal with the fact that I was in my 20s and had the body of like a 70-year-old.
Yeah,
like
totally.
They wanted to go do 20-year-old things. And I'm like, I would love to join you, sweetheart, but just give me 15 minutes to reach that point. And they're like, okay, we'll see you later.
Yeah,
I'm like,
totally. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. Remind me what your original question was, because once I got going, now you asked about my medical stuff, but I wasn't sure. I forget where I was going with it.
Yeah. And essentially then just relating that to how that's changed your views about death.
Oh, yeah.
I think
so. I think going through all of that pain and having people pray for me and really just deciding to believe that there was this all-powerful God that could heal me and that people were praying for it, and people pray for things all the time and those things are seemingly answered. But then living with this pain so consistently and it not only not getting better, but actually getting worse throughout the years. Yeah. And that coupled with the lack of community, just kind of more so, I don't know. It's a weird thing because like, I don't believe that there's a God, but in the way of what I was talking about with energy, I believe that people put energy into things. And so there may not have been a God in the beginning. Like there may not have actually been an energy known as God in the beginning. But I think that if enough people put the energy into believing that something exists, that energy can become the thing that they believe it to be. The same way that I believe that people can turn buildings that aren't haunted into haunted buildings because they put that energy in there, that there's something evil or spooky in the place. Yeah. But either way, if a creator does exist, I have no respect for it. And honestly, fuck it. From the bottom of my heart, fuck you. No, not you, creator.
No, I got you.
I think it took me after leaving the church and I didn't really have something else to like jump into to like believe in. It was just like removing this weight of
this isn't working.
Feeling like I'd just been wearing this like one of those like workout vests that has like 80 pounds of something in it, you know, and just taking it off. And it's like, oh my God, I can breathe. That's kind of how it felt. And then that coupled with the fact that I'm trans. I'm a non-binary trans mass. And that was part of also walking away from the church, is realizing that the people that I was connected to were never going to be able to support me. And so all of that coupled together, mixed with a lot of writing and time in nature, and then spending on and off 2 years at this plant nursery, working with plants was part of what changed my view on energy. And I think that kind of saved me in some ways, because the world is very cynical. And I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit cynical. I'm very judgy. And like the yogis would say, it's intuition. But, and I've learned to trust it after so many years. But plants really taught me a lot. Like when I worked at the nursery, I mostly worked at like pruning plants or repotting them, watering them, just basic care. And I saw how plants did better with other plants. Like they could truly thrive in a pot alone, but like the symbiosis of having another plant in the pot with it was like they enjoyed the company. And
it sounds like you did too.
Sometimes, and sometimes plants, propagate, they need to be split and they have to grow in separate pots and different things like that so they can grow bigger and grow and stuff. So it taught me things about like, sometimes you get too big for, spaces that you're in mentally, and you have to put yourself in new situations and grow in those places and all that kind of stuff. And plants are very regenerative, and they die and they get turned into compost, and then they're put in soil to help other plants grow. And so it all flows into this idea that energy is very much recycled.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love that you found something. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to say this exactly, but like, I'm glad that you found something that gives you comfort after feeling like this thing. I don't know. Is it weird to call religion a thing? But like after like this thing that like was
grimy monster that hid underneath my bed. Yeah,
that wasn't serving you. Like I'm glad that you found something that did, and that, gives you comfort, and you've been through so much. And so I'm glad that you have found something that it seems to give you some peace around this idea that, or not even this idea, this thing that we all have to deal with at some point of, dying and death. And so I'm really glad that you found that and that there's some comfort there. And I feel like your ideas are so beautiful. I feel like for the next couple of days, I'm just going to be thinking about the dogs and the cats and like the animals and that pureness and that energy, and, that there's an aspiration to that, right? Of that just like simplicity and that unwavering love. So yeah, I just thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Like, I really appreciate you talking with me. Like, I love that even journey that we went on, like it was very kind of big picture at the beginning, and, we were kind of all over the place, and then it got like very personal. And I just want to say thank you for being willing to do this and being vulnerable. And
yeah, of course. I enjoyed it. And I'm sorry for the bunny trails that we went on.
No, I think
we were doomed to go down them.
No, but I think they were all like valuable. That shaped the conversation, and we got to some really cool places, and we wouldn't have gotten there if we didn't, go those ways. I don't know if we would have talked about dogs and cats and plants if we wouldn't have gone down some trails or whatever. So I think it was all very fantastic, and I'm so glad that we did this, and I thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and take care.
Thanks, you too. All
right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. If a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share what you believe happens when we die. Listener support makes this podcast possible. You can now join with a premium subscription for early access to episodes, or with a monthly contribution. Either way, your support helps me keep sharing these stories. You'll find links to both in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Anything helps. Until next time, have a good life.
Hey, Zach. I'm actually a fellow photography industry dude. We haven't crossed paths directly, but I've heard about this podcast and wanted to give you my thoughts because it's a fascinating topic, of course, that everyone in the world, the greatest mystery of what happens after we die, and everyone has an opinion on, but nobody knows the answers. And for me, the particulars of this are that after a life full of a lot of privilege, very little death, something that you've mentioned. My parents are still alive, had just a lot of health and vitality through my life, had 6 healthy children, which is amazing. And, just was full of lots of great things that were going on in my life. I lost my son, Nathaniel, to suicide last April 4th, 2024. He was almost 24 years old, an amazing and incredible person, brilliant, and one of the sweetest and most loving people I've ever met. And in losing him, having to face loss, but loss by suicide in particular, and the complexities of all of that has taken me on a journey over the last 17 months in which, I thought a lot about, of course, what happens after you die. And as a parent, you wish more than anything that you would be reunited with your child and everyone that you've lost. And as a pretty staunch atheist going into all of this, the interesting part for me was reconciling my atheism as a sort of lifelong skeptic who just doesn't feel like there's evidence for any gods or any of the things that most, religious and spiritual folks believe in. How do you reconcile that with the most incredible idea that there is in the world? And that is that after you die, you will see these people again, and that I would be able to reunite with my son. So how can you will yourself into believing something that you don't believe because you want it desperately to be true? And my short answer to that is I found I'm not able to do that. I'm not able to will myself into believing that, despite the attractiveness of it. And so facing this kind of loss without the promise of an eternal reunion of, perfect joy and happiness is a really fascinating journey. It's led me on this journey of losing my son and then thinking about what does that mean for me. There's a transformational journey that I think you go through with this sort of loss in which you have to rethink everything about your life, what's important, what do you care about. In other words, the death brings to you an opportunity to reinterpret your life, to reinvent your life, almost to start again in some ways. And there's sort of an interesting opportunity that comes with that. I call it the strange gifts that sometimes these sorts of losses bring in terms of the opportunity for you, the living, and what are you going to do, with the time left in your life. And it has led me also down some paths around what is free will. Do we even have free will? This gets into the issues of things like, did someone really choose to die by suicide, for example? Was that actually a choice? Do we all have choices? It's another interesting rabbit hole. So lots of things that I find fascinating, and I really appreciate that you care about this topic. So thanks. Speak soon.